Oh, hey!
There's the mic.
Okay, so we're good now.
The thing is, if anyone can hear us now, can you give us an indication?
Yes, maybe
Sarah?
I'll ask Sarah.
Mrs. Stewart? Sorry, one moment. Here,
We'll
let's go back to the intro.
Yes.
And I'll turn our mic down. All right. We got it down now.
All right, okay, we're good to go now. Technology, right?
Technology, right? And I don't know if we chalk this up to sleep deprivation or the fact that we've just been dealing with so much technology that
we're just overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed,
right? Yeah,
right?
But we're good to go now. I think we're on track.
We're good
right?
to go. Push the rewind button on the live stream. No, don't actually. There is none.
Yeah.
We're going to start again. So, where were we?
We were saying welcome back, right?
Welcome back. This is my chance to actually correct the welcome back. Welcome back, KO, to Fredericton. We're no longer in New York, but welcome back to our 48 educators from New Brunswick that we were able to send down to the World Makerfaire in New York City.
New York City. What an experience, eh?
It was a great experience.
It was awesome.
So we were able to take in two experiences. Really, it was under the same name as Makerfaire, but on Friday, all of our teachers were able to take part in the Educators Forum. And so, you want to recap the Educators Forum there?
Yeah, well, we had one full day of presentations and forums where educators from all over, innovators really,
absolutely,
were able to present to over 300 educators, I think, that came and participated.
Yeah.
Of those 300 educators, 50 of them were from New Brunswick, Canada, which was huge.
Yeah.
And basically able to share their philosophies, their theories, and also able to share what sorts of technology that they're using to actually implement the maker philosophy and computational thinking into the classroom. Yeah,
absolutely. And on top of that, you say technology, but it was also a really great opportunity for our teachers to not learn, because so many of our teachers are using no-tech or even low-tech opportunities to get their students making. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the things that we could have easily put on our top 10. Oh, by the way, that's what this podcast, or what are we doing? YouTube Live is all about. We're going to go over some of our top 10 takeaways. But if we did a top 11, the first one definitely would have been that making is not synonymous with technology used in the classroom, right?
Definitely.
Whatever the tool is that a student uses to express themselves or express their ideas, then that's what making is all about.
That's true. And the interesting thing about computational thinking and the maker philosophy is that you can apply that to a lot of different things at a lot of different levels of high tech, low tech, medium tech, and as you're following that same logic process, right? That process of going through those steps. Yeah. It's all the same, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's kind of the take home of computational thinking, is that logic actually can be applied to everyday problems.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
One of the big things I think that our teachers from around here took out of that Friday and the whole trip is that really we're doing okay here in New Brunswick.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I have a habit, and I got to change it. I have a habit of saying little old New Brunswick. But in context, of an international event, and when they ask you, and they saw our purple shirts, where are you from? You say New Brunswick. Well, they think New Jersey.
New Jersey, right?
But then when you say, no, we're from Canada, then they have a habit of thinking of Central Canadians or from out west. And it was really neat to put it in context that there's so much happening east of Ontario. And it was really neat to have those conversations. And there were a couple of times where even Dale Doherty, the founder of Make Media and the reason why Makerfaire exists, was shouting out one of his presentations that, hey, look at all of these New Brunswickers here.
That's right.
You know, and so there's something great happening in Atlantic Canada, and we're so pleased to be able to include 50 teachers there at that event. And now the next step is to invite some of these international innovators to New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, and to share the innovative learning opportunities that teachers are providing for their students.
That's right. And I think on the other side of the coin, it's really really good for those teachers to actually experience that and to realize that we are on the right track, and if not, we're actually exceeding some of these places in what we're doing, right? We're already there.
Absolutely.
And it's reassuring. The confidence that comes out of that kind of experience just is through the roof, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it provides a good opportunity for us to remind all of our teachers and our students that we're able to work with that we're here to support their innovative classroom ideas and projects.
Yeah.
So, without further ado, adieu! On veut te présenter avec nos top 10 that we took away.
Just 10. We had a hard time coming up with 10, but I think...
absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through our top 10, and just as long as you have a script written out, are we ready for the top 10?
I think so. Yeah. I think one of the things we didn't mention either was that the group is made up of French and English teachers too, which was huge. First time for that kind of thing to happen in a while, where teachers of both languages are collaborating together and not necessarily, right? So huge. And I think a lot of them took a lot of things from it. These are just our top 10, but they're bringing a whole bunch of different things back to the classroom, to the school. So
absolutely, and we encourage the sharing to continue, which if the flight home was any indication, it is certainly going to continue. All of the teachers around us, we're chatting back and forth with project ideas, so we're really excited about that. All right,
let's get started.
There we are.
Yeah.
Top 10. These are not in order of priority of order or anything like that. Okay, so these are just 10 insights that we pulled away from Makerfaire. All right. So number 1, G Key from Chibitronics.
All I have to say is wow. Right?
Or holy crap.
Holy crap.
And please excuse the euphemism, because
but that is a direct quote from her.
Absolutely.
She was awesome.
Absolutely. So this young engineer graduated from the MIT Media Lab, and under the Lifelong Kindergarten Group, oversawn, run by Mitchell Resnick, and they also produce things like Scratch, and the Makey came from that lab. Anyway, G is responsible for Chibitronics, and look it up, and you've probably seen some of her creations before. They are the circuit stickers, and so many of our teachers have used the sorry, I'm distracted by the knock at the door. Conductive tape to tape down LEDs and things like that. Copper tape, right? And so what's really neat, Chibitronics has just released an Arduino-enabled or a microcontroller that can connect to paper, and you can embed LEDs and sensors on paper crafts.
Yes, and I think the neat thing about her approach to it wasn't just that, because that is one thing in its own, but she was able to take a unique approach at that kind of that kind of technique and actually tell stories with it, which was fascinating, right? To be able to present something like circuitry and LEDs and electronics as a way to actually tell a story and to express yourself, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of the projects that we talk about and that we work with students and teachers in New Brunswick, we talk about their expressive voice and how do you portray that expression and ultimately the narrative that a student wants to construct through the embedding of technology.
Yes.
And sometimes it can come out as a contrived sense of expression, where it's not a limitation of the student's voice, but it's a limitation of the technology in that it's not creating that nuance that the student is looking for.
Exactly.
But with some of the projects that Chibitronics were showing, it was ultimate expression of the student's narrative, and it was really cool. And so we can't wait to see our teachers bring back these ideas and use them in a very playful way.
Yeah, and even without her board in your hands, you can still recreate these types of things with ordinary circuitry like LEDs, copper tape and everything, and encourage your students to actually tell stories and express themselves in a way that they probably, I mean, I never even could imagine being able to do what she was doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Ko, you're going to have to ad-lib here for a little moment because I cannot figure out the hotkeys to change the image here.
Oh, to change the image, right?
Hotkeys.
Okay. One of the things I think with the Chibitronics presentation was just how open she was and how casual she was in talking about her experiences and things. I think one of the big things that a lot of our teachers took out of that presentation is the fact that she kind of was new at all of this and really went into this as sort of someone who didn't really know much about circuitry and Arduino and all these things, but wanted to express herself in a different way, right? And I think that's an interesting sort of it was interesting for someone to actually listen to that and experience that, to realize that you can totally relate to that, right? As someone who perhaps doesn't have an experience in this kind of technology, perhaps, or that kind of technology, to understand that, we're all like that, right? And it's just a matter of us taking the jump into that and having the support around you to sort of walk you through and to sort of take those chances and those risks and make mistakes. Right?
And she was so incredibly skillful at being able to communicate the purposeful integration of art into a technology-based project. But really, you can't even say a technology-based project, because really it was an art-based project that used technology as a tool to express that idea. My
favorite was when she had the red LED. You flip the page back and she had drawn a character on it, and when you pressed the page, the red LED would light up as the heart, and you could have it beating. It was amazing, right?
That's right.
So much can come out of that.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, so moving on. There were a lot of 3D printers. In fact, every year there's a 3D printer village, and this year did not disappoint. Thank you. So resin-based printers they're not a new, but they're kind of like the alternative to regular filament-based printers. And so this uses a liquid, a resin, and it uses a light source to cure that resin layer by layer by layer. And it actually prints upside down. And so one of the classic resin-based printers that came out around the same time as the Makerbot 10 years ago is the Form 1 Labs resin-based printer. They usually do run more expensive, but it's because you can get incredible quality. The layer height is virtually non-existent in a resin-based printer. One of the reasons why you don't see a lot of two reasons why you don't see a lot of resin-based printers at the school level. One, they're expensive, as I mentioned. Two, the resin isn't exactly the safest material, particularly when it has to be ready to, if you want to print a large object, you have to have a lot of resin in there. Mm-hmm. Hazardous materials, fumes, and things like that.
Venting and all of that.
So, this OLO, is the size of a traditional smartphone. And why is that important? Right?
Because it actually can be connected to a smartphone. I think what the neat thing about this is that no longer, with this kind of technology, no longer are you just restricted to a 3D printer that is connected to your laptop or your CPU or anything like that. This kind of thing, it can be portable.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So this system, sorry, I wasn't really listening. I was stalking this print because I remember in our last YouTube Live, our microphone picked up the print in the background, and it's actually coming loose, so you can't really see it, but I can just pull this failed print off. Printer shaming on here. All right, so maybe we need a resin-based printer.
Could be.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is really cool because the price point of this Kickstarter, it is still a Kickstarter. We weren't able to bring it back. Did you mention this?
No.
It was $99 US. And so you pour the resin into a tray, and it only takes a little bit of resin, and then it uses the ambient light, or not the ambient light, it uses your cell phone as a light source in order to pull the, in order to cure the closest layer to that light source. And so, it hardens one layer of resin, and then it moves up in incremental step, and then it hardens the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until, out of this swamp of liquid comes your print.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is a quote. When you give them access. And so this is the them in here is referring to students, right? And the access is not only to a maker environment, like a makerspace or with the tools, but it's not necessarily requiring students to have a confirmed idea in order to go down and use these tools, just to allow them to play and to have access to these tools and these ideas in a collaborative space. And if we always set out with a concrete goal in mind when we bring students down to this collaborative space, that may put a roadblock into the creative expression, or the creation that can come out of just providing students the opportunity to go down.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think the take home from this, it was more or less a question: when do you give them access to, right? And that opened up a discussion. This was on Friday,
right?
And from that discussion, a lot of talk was going around from talking about how it's right away, right? Like you were saying, and it's just that whole idea that the maker process and the idea of thinking computationally and going through things in this logical way and breaking down problems and challenging yourself. It all starts from the beginning, right? There's no reason why it can't start in the early grade levels in elementary school, and it's scaffolded, and you work your way up through that process. And,
That's just it. I think we'll leave it at that point that you just made about where does making all fit into a curriculum or into a culture of instruction. And I think often we get really bogged down in that curricular framework discussion, and it is very important because we see the great learning that happens in open creative environments like makerspaces, but often we in the categorizing of the learning, sometimes we remove the creative expression from that project, and we miss an opportunity of what students are learning beyond curriculum when we're able to meaningfully integrate access into the instructional time.
Yeah, and I think a quick point to even leave it at that too is, sorry, I don't... boom! But it's just the idea of describing these things as tools that you can use to express yourself, right? And not as something that you graduate to, right?
Yeah.
It's something that, it's like a pencil or a piece of paper or an instrument, right? You're expressing yourself with this technology, right?
Even though these tech tools, sorry, one more, you're just saying all this
just
stuff.
keep going.
Even though some of these tools can be seen as so complex,
Exactly.
Programming of an Arduino or a microbit, it's not, and they should not, and they can't wait until they're in a certain grade level in order to have access to these tools.
Exactly.
Right?
That's the whole reason why there is a such thing as Scratch Junior.
Well, that's just it, right?
It's all scaffolded, working your way through that process.
I think we're getting heated because we're particularly
so
passionate
excited
about this, right?
Yeah.
The skill sets of our students in New Brunswick and in Atlantic Canada, around the world, are such that they can pick up these incredibly capable tools, like Arduinos, like microbits, like laser cutters, and be able to use them at a decreasingly rich age level.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, here we
Next.
go. Paper posters. Go for it.
All right. So there were different sections in Makerfaire, and one of the sections focused mostly on resources available to teachers, and that was a highlight for a lot of the group. I got to actually walk through and see some devices and some techniques and some products that are available and being used in different classrooms around the world, really. And this one stood out to us. Jacob and I walked up to this booth, and right away we're drawn to it. Paper coasters, roller coasters. Basically, you're making roller coasters, marble coasters with paper.
Yeah.
And this group actually had a set of templates that you could print off on cardstock and actually fasten together with tape, and then connect together to make different routes, different paths to and run them as a marble maze. And this really fascinated us. What we really are trying to focus on nowadays, ourselves, trying to steer our focus, is on this no-tech concept, no-tech option.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And again, it's just going through that same idea of computational thinking, but in a situation where you're not really using any technology.
No.
Maybe down the road you can implement technology in something like this. But
well, you're scaffolding the technology integration as well, right?
Exactly.
And so I really love the design thinking components of the paper coasters and, and the computational thinking. When you call it a roller coaster, there are certain key characteristics that students always, think about. What about the loop-de-loop? What about, you're starting at a high point of high altitude to low altitude, and how is, inertia and momentum going to influence the projectile that you put on it and things like that.
Yeah.
So, and then, like you said, if students decide to measure the velocity of the marble that they put on it, then they can use something like a microbit to program the start gate and the stop gate, right, to measure the velocity of the marble between the two. So absolutely, being able to engage students in that continuum of technology integration from no-tech to low-tech to high-tech, I think this is an excellent example of that. And we bought copies for everyone. Well, okay, no, we didn't.
Not everyone.
We share copies of all of the PDFs. We purchased a USB key with all of the PDFs for the paper coasters on it. So let us know if you want us to come into your classroom and lead a session of paper roller coasters, and we might just leave those files with you.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
So great. Next one. Let's
Quote.
move through this a little quicker than the last one, but there's so much great stuff to tell you about.
All right. You want to do this one? Because it was yours.
Yeah, sure. All right. One of the
last
last speakers started a Maker Academy in New York City, and all of it was surrounding the Maker philosophy. And there was one quote that really stuck with me, and he said, "What do you need to start making? You need agency, authenticity, and audience." And it's as simple as that, without drilling into any of it. Starting with the audience, I cannot think of a better way to define audience than our students and our teachers and our educational stakeholder community within New Brunswick and within our communities. So many of our students are looking at making as an opportunity to solve local community-based problems. Right? And so when we provide them with the agency, our students are going to come up with authentic projects and products that relate to a community-based audience.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's just that sort of tying it all in, right? Having those three A's together makes you think about how they are interconnected and just as important as the last, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the authenticity, just to wrap this up, is sometimes we struggle with how making fits into our instructional culture of our schools. And our days are so compact and bound for time already, that learning still, in order to create some structure, happens in 1 hour blocks or 45-minute blocks. And I understand that. But what happens when we look at these Maker activities and we break them up into either an extra, how do you fit Maker education in, or Maker activities, or project-based learning, it's tough to fit them into confined time constructs, and I think that's what sometimes lowers the authenticity, of those projects.
Exactly.
And so it was neat to see how that school was able to fit Maker education into their entire instructional philosophy to make sure that these three A's rang true throughout everything that they did.
Yeah, I think it helps model the real world more, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, DIY Pi laptop.
We were talking about this a while ago, and some schools, a number of times where some schools, here we go, there's the Raspberry Pi, approach us and talk about how it'd be great to have a set of laptops to do this,
Yeah.
and that. And Jacob and I always sort of talk about how great it would be to actually give them the opportunity to make their own
Yeah.
laptop and to do what they want to do
Yeah.
with that device, right?
Yeah.
And here is a company, Piper, I think, right?
Piper, yeah.
They were there at Makerfaire to display this, and it's always the kind of visual that I get when we talk about this. But imagine either having this kit
Right.
or being equipped with the know-how and the support
Right.
to be able to build your own computer in this same way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Raspberry Pi provides, sorry, I'm cutting you off
no,
here,
it's fine.
but how cool would it be for our students to have whatever they decide, they can design their own, whether it's a suitcase or I've often joked about the idea of a pie plate, a Raspberry Pi inside a pie. But many of the classrooms have this.
Mm-hmm.
It's a $35 US computer. The components and things. You can build a computer for under $200.
Yeah, with all the components.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, too, if you look at these products made by Piper, they have specific keys to, buttons to press and things.
Yeah.
You don't have to be restricted to how they've built it either. And so the design process comes into that where you really think about, okay, what am I going to use this laptop for?
Right.
What's it going to look like? Right? So you
Yeah.
get to experience that as a learner, too. Right?
That's right. Physical computing is going to remain, physical computing already is a big part of our technology.
Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned toaster in the last YouTube live, but a toaster requires a microcontroller, a miniature computer, in order to toast your bread to the correct doneness.
Yeah.
A Raspberry Pi, you wouldn't put that in into your toaster, but you don't necessarily need a display and a keyboard and a mouse in order to use a computer.
Right.
Our toaster is an example. Using the Raspberry Pi in an embedded project where you don't have a screen, but maybe you have physical buttons hooked up to a Makey into a Raspberry Pi, that's an example of a computer. And so what I like about these DIY Raspberry Pi powered laptops is that it really extends students' definition of what a computer is.
Exactly, yeah. Definitely.
So if there's anyone watching, this is a project that we would love to get off the ground.
Yeah, I think a lot of the cohort people saw that and really were drawn to it. And it's cool. We'd love to support someone in setting something like that in their classroom.
Absolutely. All right. Another quote from Friday was not economic necessity, but creative expression. I enjoy this quote because I enjoy this quote. That's weird to say, isn't it?
Not really.
Many of our projects that happen in a makerspace quickly take on an entrepreneurial focus and a purpose, and that's incredible. We have great projects, and many students start out that project not from not to be economically driven to complete this project, but as an opportunity to just extend that project, right? Mm-hmm. However, it is important to remember that a makerspace is as much an art studio as it is a startup percolator, as it is a robotics lab. We have to make sure that we don't necessarily direct students to produce one type of project in a space. Mm-hmm. And there are so many great opportunities for creative expression in a makerspace that may themselves turn into an entrepreneurial focus. Yeah. Last year we had students creating light up bands that were they started out with an artistic approach, an aesthetic approach, when the wearer, they're not only wearing a bracelet for a fashion accessory, but also it lights up. And I can't remember in response to what, but that aesthetic expression that was incorporated into an artistic expression, and it ultimately led to a business because they sold them. Yeah. So I think it's this quote is a great reminder that a makerspace is an opportunity, a location in which a creation can be constructed. And I know I'm using a lot of simple words, but
it's true though. I think even in that example that you gave, and directed at this quote too, you almost could think of it as the origins of any type of project or any challenge that you present to yourself, right? And in that case, for example, the starting point for that student was not economics.
Right.
It was artistic expression.
Right.
Turned into economics.
Right.
Right. So it's interesting, right? You're right that it can take different. You can look at it in different ways.
Yeah.
You can approach these things in different ways.
Yeah.
And this is definitely the place to do all of that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Often we get stuck into the purpose of creative expression, and so and that's I'm sure one of the negatives of art history for many years is that, all right, well, this is neat, but why? And your answer is, why not?
Why not?
Right?
That's right.
And a makerspace is a perfect model for that creative expression, and I get excited when we see projects like that. So
yeah, and I think, I'm not sure where that quote came from, but there were lots of experiences that we had where that was in the forefront for sure, right?
What are we doing for hydroponics?
What aren't we doing for hydroponics?
We haven't started yet.
No, well,
there's all these ideas.
We got to get some. We're going to have some students come in and help us with all of the different facets of what we have planned. We have a hydroponics system planned for our second room here. We have a couple of windows, and we're going to set up a hanging hydroponics system.
Yeah.
But on top of that, we're going to try and automate it.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And so from Makerfaire, in our top 10, we wanted to mention hydroponics because there was an incredible... Makerfaire actually had to add an entire tent dedicated to the making of food, right?
Yeah.
And well, of course,
why not?
We always make food, right? But this was really driven towards an environmentally friendly and ecologically sustainable way for people to make food for their own house, their own house, right?
Yeah.
And so hydroponics is a great way to engage students into that making process for making food and being cognizant of the resources required to sustain gardens and natural resources and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're really excited to be able to support school projects based on hydroponics or even aquaponics. And Makerfaire had all kinds of examples from the tower gardens that you see that are a very corporate, more of a...
like a product, right?
Yeah, more of a product that you can purchase, but there are all kinds of great DIY solutions out there, and the one that you see here on the screen is similar to the one that we're going to follow from 3D Ponics. There are 3D printed components, and this is actually a Canadian company, a Canadian organization that's interested in hydroponics, and it's all freely available. And it's pretty simple, that's it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're excited for New Brunswick to get on the hydroponics bandwagon.
I think so. Yeah, it seems to be from Makerfaire. This was one of the things that, was one of the trends, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Purposeful play. Okay.
I think this was a quote directly from a New Brunswicker, wasn't it?
Yep,
It was
absolutely.
Will that brought this up, and it was an excellent point.
Yeah.
I think too much of our time is spent on the opposite of this, right? Structure and all this kind of thing. And the maker mentality is the opposite of that for the most part, right? Where we want the kids to discover on their own. We want to encourage inquiry-based, the inquiry process.
Yeah.
We want them to find those answers for themselves through just discovering.
Yeah.
Right? What's lacking, though, is our ability to do that as well.
That's right.
And that was kind of what really stood out for me with that quote, and it sparked a whole conversation on Friday there. And I think it's really important, a huge take-home for me, and I know others in the group felt that too.
When we help schools and teachers and administrators develop maker spaces or maker education programs, there's a lot of apprehension because whether it's no-tech, low-tech, or high-tech, there's a learning curve to every tool that you put in any space, right? Or every material. How do you properly use that material without wasting it and things like that? And with purposeful play, that apprehension can really subside because teachers are never going to, and students for that matter, independent of our level of geekdom, we're never going to get to a point where we know how to use every tool in the space that we construct.
And nor should we.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because if you're passionate about knitting, you're not going to necessarily know how to program an Arduino, right? Could you integrate the two? Yeah, absolutely, and maybe you will. But this making sure that we leave room and time for play in a makerspace and in a project-based program for students is incredibly important, and it's one of the ways that we can lessen the apprehension that we have for all of this new technology in a space.
Yeah, it's not scary anymore if you know that it's okay to not know anything about it and just learn as you go.
Let the students play.
Let them play. And
play certainly doesn't mean, destruction.
No,
right?
Certainly not. No.
It's the opposite. It is construction.
Yeah.
And the purpose is derived from that playtime often.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah,
anyway.
Exactly.
Were you going to say excellent point?
I was, yeah.
I think you should say it.
Absolutely.
We need a button. Bang! Excellent point. It would make that sound as well. All right, laser cutting.
Oh.
I really don't want to bring this up, but that's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Well...
Oh, am I throwing it to you? I really don't want to bring this up, so here, go.
Well, I think maybe you don't want to bring it up because we don't have ours yet, right?
Yes. Yes.
But this is one of those things that it's a hot topic nowadays. It's a hot item. Everybody's got them. There's potential with this, and it can lead to...
Everyone outside of schools have them.
Yes.
Right. Makerspaces outside of schools have them.
Yes.
Laser cutting, trend for people to talk about 3D printing at Makerfaire has kind of been replaced by laser engraving and laser cutting. It's a really interesting industry right now because you are seeing more players come to the table. Mm-hmm. There used to be really only two smaller scale laser production companies, manufacturers, Epilog and Spectrum. But now you're seeing people coming to the table like Glowforge, hints. We would love to have our laser cutter. No, I know they're working on a deadline here. But even Dremel. Dremel, the small little rotary tools, they're making a school-based laser cutter. One of the issues, we can't wait to get our hands on the Glowforge because it's going to bring a whole new layer of expression to student projects. But it is a CO2-driven laser too.
There's safety. Yeah.
You have to have ventilation, and there's a lot of considerations before putting a laser cutter in the hands of the student, and definitely not in their hands because they're huge.
But this is the future for us. I think involves laser cutters for sure, and it's going to be something that lots of people can get into to create some really amazing things.
Yeah, absolutely.
We saw topographical maps made with laser cutters. It's amazing, right?
Yeah, no, it's really cool.
Oh, and even the wood that actually felt like fabric because it was laser cut in such a way that it could be bent. Anyways, just amazing.
No,
amazing.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So all of the people watching from New Brunswick that were down there, just stay tuned. Laser cutting will be coming to our schools. We just want to make sure that it is affordable and a safe use of resources. All right. And that's it.
Yeah, we're back.
We're done. All right. Well, listen. We do have another major part of this.
Yes.
Of this little YouTube live presentation, and we're going to award a prize. We had challenges for our teachers down in New York, and so this is the second challenge, and we're going to put the names into a Scratch-enabled random name generator.
Yes.
And come up with a prize. To which I am stumbling right now because I forget what the prize. Oh, you have the prize.
I have the prize. I'm already organized.
What's the prize, KO?
The prize? Well, a few of our people in our cohort actually got some microbits over the weekend, and we're going to help them with some more of those. One of the things that we have around the office here that we've been playing around with is this guy. This is a Move Mini, and it's actually a kit that you use your microbit with. It has motors inside that allows you to actually turn this guy into a robot.
Cool.
Yeah. So we're going to give one of those away. We have a new shiny new box.
Look at that. And that's from Kitronic?
It is from Kitronic, yeah.
Okay. Kitronic, just like the BBC, is from the UK, and they're a great little electronics distributor, but they also put some kits together, and this is one of them. All right. Do you want to put the name, walk through the code, put the names in, and I'll read them off?
Okay. So this is the same name generator that we made for our last YouTube Live.
Yep.
We did classroom enhancement. It's basically a random name generator where you can put the number of names in your group first, and then it asks you for each person's name. Once you've done that, then you press space key, it is, in the code, to generate a random item from that list, right? So, how many people?
The fact that we're both wearing plaid shirts is really throwing off the resolution of the camera. I see all these wavy lines.
I know,
like
it's
that.
from my shirt.
We
mostly,
really need
right?
to plan this a little better.
Solid.
Maybe we'll
next
get
time.
that before our next YouTube Live. All right. How many names? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
12.
By the way, the challenge was to find the location where KO and I took a picture. It was on the bio bus, by the way, in the park. We took a picture very early on into the Makerfaire, and then to retweet that picture. And so the following people successfully completed that challenge, and they were...
Hold on, we need to get in the scratch.
Oh, we'll bring it up.
There we go.
Go.
Okay. So 12.
12.
Now, what's your name? So first name we have...
Joanna. Kendra. And KO apologizes in advance if he spells your name wrong on screen.
Hey, now.
Eric. Andrew. Lawrence. Marie-Pierre. Like Lawrence, there's a W in it.
Oh, shoot. Sorry, Lawrence.
Natasha.
CH, right?
CHA. Genevieve.
That one.
We could put Jen. There we are. Good. Yeah. Dave.
Dave, that's an easy one.
Mike. Mathieu. And Tina. Thank you very much for completing the challenge. You were successful in finding the location where our innovation coordinator and our program director for New Brunswick...
This is awesome. Keep going.
Yeah? Well, you distracted me by your laughter. And, Mr. Stewart, can you please let us know the lucky winner?
All right, here we go. Space key.
Lawrence! We needed theme music. Lawrence, you are going home today with a Kitronix Move Mini Microbit Robot. I hope it arrives faster than the bearings that I sent to you last year. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for joining in on our recap of our top 10 experiences from Makerfaire. I'm just going to go back to the main screen here. We're going to continue to do some YouTube Lives, and we'll do a much better job at scheduling them in the future so that maybe you can see them while they are live. The fact that it is 5 o'clock is probably a little too late to do these YouTube Lives. Right?
We were close.
We were close. Yeah. All right. We have a few more bugs to work out. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you reach out to us at either of our email addresses, and we will see you soon.
See you next time.
See you next time. And now we go into... Oh, we can turn our mic.